Okay. All right. So this is my website that I've created over the past year. And what I really wanted to focus on was climate change and its effects on humanity. And this is my homepage where I will I have everything that I need. And there's a bunch of different subsections that you could go to. So we start with we need change before we run out of time. Here's a little intro. The fate of Earth's health is in our hands. Change has been growing concern over the past couple of decades, and we need to come back to fit. We need together to fix this problem before it's too late. And I start off with my goal. And my ultimate goal for making this website is to educate the public on the severity of this topic and also show you the ways that yourself can help. And if you were to be viewing this, you can click all of these tabs to go to separate sections. So when I click this tab right here, it's going to bring me to this part. And this is talking about what is my goal. And I just start off by saying, now I know that this entire thing might seem a bit strange. You may be questioning yourself why you're sitting here listening to a high school kid and that you don't even really know me. And here I kind of just try in this paragraph in this little page, I try to just like tell you guys why I'm doing this, what I want to get out, what I want to get from it, and how you guys, well, I get into a bit later of how you guys can help yourself. But this is pretty much just like the intro, trying to like introduce you guys to the topic and a little bit about myself. And yeah, that's pretty much it with this slide. So then when I go back to the screen, if I scroll down, I can go to about me. And if you want to learn how I went from a normal high school kid to an owner of a website, but that's kind of. So here I just talk about myself a little bit, and one thing I talked about is how I started off in Guilford, and then after sixth grade, the summer from sixth to seventh grade, I decided to go to Hamden Hall, and I spent 5 years there from seventh to 11th grade, and I met a lot of influential people during that time, and one of those persons was my ecological science teacher, which I had in 11th grade, which was my last year there, and I feel like we just kind of bonded over the year, and especially towards the end of the year, we really started to take a liking to each other, and I decided to include him. Well, I kept in contact with him a little bit, not really, but this project actually helped me stay in contact with him a decent amount, and he became a big part of this project. So one thing that I really enjoyed about it was that it kind of brought me closer to him, and I started to view him as less of a mentor and a teacher and more as like a friend. And without him, I wouldn't have known uh, more than half of the information that I put on this website. So that's a little bit about myself. And then if we go over here, keep on talking about so this is a little bit about the history behind climate change, and this is if you want to learn like the basics and you want to get to know a little more about it before you start to really go in depth with it. And so if you just click here, so right here, the history behind climate change, and in this paragraph, I say climate change is always happening no matter what's on Earth. The Earth is always cycling between warm and cold. The Earth has points where there's a ton of CO2 in the air, and the Earth is very warm. And there's also times where the Earth is very cold and practically frozen. And although this is true, this is not an excuse to claim that climate change is not influenced by humans. And at this point, that statement is straight up foolishness. And I think it's time we start taking action instead of blaming our mistakes on nature. So one common thing that a lot of people who deny that climate change is happening, they say that it's just natural because it's true that the earth changes and sometimes it's very hot, sometimes there's a lot of volcanic eruptions and there's tons of CO2 in the air, and there's other times where we've had ice ages where everything's just frozen. So they try and blame it on nature and say that this isn't us. But if you look at this next paragraph, so every year since 1977 has been warmer than the yearly average for the 20th century. So from 1900 to 2000, every year past 1977 has been they have been over the yearly average for that century. And not only that, but 16 out of the 17 warmest recorded years have occurred since 2001. And that means that in the past 18 years, 16 of those have been in the top 17 warmest years recorded. And the time period also includes the year 2016, which was the hottest recorded year humanity has ever had. And a study from that year showed, with the subtraction of burning oils and coal, that there'd be a very low chance that the 13 out of the 15 out of the warmest 15 would not have happened. So 13 of the years in between that time period from 1977 to 2019, 13 of those, 13 of 15 hottest years would not have happened. And then I just go on a little bit and just talk more facts. And here we talk about our growing plastic. I talk about our growing plastic issue, and there's a worldwide growing plastic issue that is tearing apart our ocean and our land. And if you click here, it brings you to my page about ocean or plastic pollution, pretty much, and it's plastic crisis. And this is just kind of like an intro talking about how we have way too much plastic, and we kind of tried to integrate like into our system to what's it called, because we were starting to use a lot of paper and we were starting to tear down a lot of trees, and plastic was supposed to save. But at this point now we still have deforestation going on. We're taking down tons of trees, using all of them, and we're not using them as much because now we're using plastic, and now plastic is just sitting on the earth. And then get into, I think, forward subsections, which is single-use plastic. And I just talk about how single-use plastic is anything like water bottles, plastic bags, food packaging, straws. And there's around 300 million tons of single-use plastic produced every year. And it's also very bad for the earth when it breaks down, because because the plastic of release chemicals, and during the down process to uh, okay, yeah, so during the breakdown process, these chemicals are referred to bisphenol A and polystyrene. I think that's how you pronounce them. And if these chemicals enter our bloodstream, they can be very harmful. And really the big issue about single-use plastics is that they're not really usable. So when you take a water bottle, you just put it in the recycling bin. Most people don't even do that. So it's not like something you use all the time. Like, let's say like a little like a plastic tub that you use. You can use that for years, but something like a plastic bottle, you throw it away instantly. So it just adds on to the our plastic issue today. Another thing is littering. Littering is also a massive issue and is the reason why single-use plastics find their way into the ocean. Littering can be done by anyone, and it is illegal. And even though it seems different, a big company dumping in harmful chemicals into water bodies or wherever they are, and then you throwing a water bottle on the side of the road or whatever, it seems like a big corporation doing that would be so much different, but it really isn't because everything starts to add up. And because there's not that many big corporations, let's say a couple do that, and then a ton of people, they throw away their plastics. It's kind of the same thing. So that's that. And then landfills. Landfills are also a huge problem with our trash system. And to put it into perspective, a landfill is basically a hole in the ground filled with trash. And they're currently our best way, well, not our best way, but they're currently our most popular way of dealing with trash at the moment, which we're trying to fix. And then so landfills are really bad for two specific reasons, and one of the first is that it produces methane. Methane is a greenhouse gas, and it is harmful to our environment when it is produced. And the thing about landfills is that they're not often regulated; they're not managed well. So the methane that is produced is supposed to be the methane that's produced is supposed to be contained, but at some point it does leak out and it goes into the atmosphere, which is bad for the environment. And then the second thing is leachate. And what leachate is when it rains during a lane at a landfill, the water seeps through all the trash and it takes out toxic chemicals and harmful substances from the trash, and it just starts to pile on at the bottom of the pit. And all landfills at the bottom, they have a what's it called? They have like a tar that they would lie down so that the trash doesn't. That liquid then through the ground, and it could even end up in groundwater, which contaminates the water we have. So that's the second part. And then once we stop using landfills, they aren't really regulated. So this can happen a lot. And when you dig a hole and you put down the tarp, and then you when you're done, you're not going to dig it up. If there's a hole at the bottom, they just leave it. And the last thing is the Great Garbage Patch. And the Great Garbage Patch, it's located in the Pacific Ocean, and it's caused by a gyre. Now, a gyre is a circular ocean current, and they're located all around the world. There's 5 major gyres, including the North Pacific, South Pacific, North Atlantic, South Atlantic, and the Indian Ocean. And these 5 gyres they're all created by the rotation of Earth. So water moves depending on the hemisphere, and because the Earth's rotates, the gyres in the northern hemisphere, they spin to the right, and which includes the North Atlantic and the North Pacific, and then the gyres in the southern hemisphere, which is the South Atlantic and the South Pacific, and also the Indian, they spin to the left in that same circular motion. And all these plastics, they don't really clump together, but they start to stay in those areas, and that's why you see, like in this picture right here, you see these large patches of garbage and mostly plastic. And the thing is like when you see that right there, most of the plastic isn't even on the surface, it's below it. And actually the majority of the plastic in the ocean is called microplastics. And those plastics, they're invisible to the naked eye, and they take up the majority of the plastic, and they're really harmful because they can just be practically invisible to us and even fish, and um, when they eat or whatever they do in the water, that gets into their system and it could tear up their stomachs. And then that's it for um, our plastic crisis. So all right, so here These are actually two different, not really games, but they're kind of interaction. They're kind of games, but they're more used for educational purposes. And so there's Smog City 2 and there's Symbio City. Both of these, um, they're sites that I use. This would load. Okay. All right. Smog City. Okay. So I this just kind of bugged out a little bit. There we go. Okay, so Symbio City and Smog City. So right here, Symbio City. Symbio City was a site that I used early in the year for environmental science, and it was a simulation of, and it made you the mayor of a town, and your goal was to make the town sustainable. And it was a great way to learn from the viewpoint of like somebody who's in charge of that. So how they are supposed to make make the city more sustainable, make it more eco-friendly while not spending enough money, because in the game you only have, I think, $50,000 to make changes. And the thing that I really liked about this is it didn't just tell you new cool things that are coming out, new technology that you could use. It kind of made you have to think from their perspective. So not just like, because normally you would think to yourself, oh, why don't they get this, it's the best, whatever. But this kind of shows you that like you have to get things that fit your community. So things that first off you can afford. And another thing I liked is it was more of like a combination of things. So like so two things went well together, and they would make it they would make it more eco-friendly than two other things, even if those two other things were more expensive. So it's kind of hard to explain without playing it. And but I would recommend anybody here tries it. I can press here to play, but I'm pretty, yeah. You have to you have to download Adobe Flash, and just not gonna do that at this point. But if you want to, you can feel free to try it. Okay. Yeah, this is a little buggy. Okay, and then Smog City 2. Smog City 2, it's another site that I used this year during my environmental science class. And it's a little different than Symbio City, but it still addresses the same guides you through, and it tells you I think this, you can't really see it, but this is the game here. And as you can tell on the side, it says industry, off-road, what is that? I can't read, weather. And it tells it's really cool because when you play it like walks you through it, and it teaches you a bunch of things, and how two things together they can make it better or worse, and then one thing outweighs another. And I just remember there was one thing that what's it called? there was one thing, it was talking about some type of gas that keeps heat closer to the ground, and I thought that was really interesting. And if I press here, I could go to it and play it, but I don't want to do that because it'll probably bug out the screen. So if I just go back to the home page and then I start to scroll down, I can go to documentaries and right here. So in the past 2 years, I've been in two different environmental science classes. I was in ecological science last year and environmental this year. And over those years, I've seen many different films and documentaries, and there have been some that were more useful, and then there are some that are more fun and more like a movie, but kind of less educational. And in my opinion, I there are two films that I really enjoyed watching, and I thought they were exceptional because they were very educational, gave you a lot of great information, but they also kind of had like a plot to it. They're really good films. And if you come down here, so these are my two favorites. It's Chasing Ice and Chasing Coral. So Chasing Ice, it's a great film that follows James Balog during his great adventures to capture the melting of glaciers. And the film shows the ups and downs of his journey as he attempts to change the world and its viewpoint on glacier melting. And throughout his adventure, he discovers unbelievable our viewpoint. And it's just a great film for anyone who wants to learn more about climate change and especially glacier melting. And honestly, I think it's really an enjoyable film to watch for anyone. And actually, I put the link here, and if this will probably bug it out, but you go to this site right here, um, you can actually watch the full hour and 15-minute film. So you don't need to have any subscription to anything. You could straight up just watch it right there. And then this will probably bug out again. And then this is honestly my favorite film, and it's called Chasing Coral. And I actually watched it last year and this year. So in both of my classes, my teacher had us watch this, and this is another film dedicated to the environment and environmental awareness. And this is told you it's my favorite film. Both, and I saw them in both. So the only issue that there is with the film is that it's on Netflix. So if you don't have Netflix, which I'm sure you all do, you can't watch it. But if you do, it's free to watch if you have a Netflix account or know someone is. Film follows a group of friends and co-workers on their journey to bring bleaching to the public. And coral bleaching is when coral turns white due to increased water temperature. So what happens is, as coral dies, it actually starts to bleach before it completely dies. So it starts to die, then it bleaches like this right here, and it becomes completely white. And then after that, it starts to decay and rot. And so when they bleach, it's actually their exoskeleton like form. I can't remember what it says during the film, but it's something about their exoskeleton. And the only thing that's different, or so this is happening all around the world, and it's pretty. If you think about it, it would be the same thing as if we're started turning white. So it's obviously a really big thing, and without corals, what's it without corals, the oceans are going to start to fail because corals contain, I think, around 90% of all sea creatures or fish species. And this film, it just shows them trying to bring coral bleaching to the public eye, and it was just a really good film that I enjoyed watching, and I think anyone should check it out as well. All right, so here is Greenpeace, and Greenpeace is a non-governmental environmental organization that is trying to make a difference. And if you click down here, it goes to my page about Greenpeace. And so time for change, the future is renewable. That's one of their slogans. And right here, if you press this, you can visit their site right here. Just probably bug it out, but okay, so this is I have a little paragraph about Greenpeace, and just saying it's a non-governmental environmental organization. And so Greenpeace is an organization, and its mission is to form peaceful protests, and they're in charge of holding worldwide protests and for worldwide issues. And they organize protests and raise money for awareness to spread. And most of these protests are in protest to the flaws in the governmental plans or actions. And Greenpeace is known to spend somewhere in the range of around 10 million US dollars a year to while fighting for a change, and they use this money in hopes to protect the earth and return it to the natural beauty that it once was. And they have somewhere in the range of 30 million supporters, and they have worldwide connections. And they originated in Vancouver, Canada, and they were a small group who opposed nuclear testing in the Pacific Ocean. And but now they're located in Amsterdam, but they have support and facilities all around the world. And if you press here, you could visit them again. I just put it twice. But yeah, I would really check out Greenpeace. They're really, I like it because they try and turn people to face problems that they wouldn't alone. So like when there's a really big issue, they form it so that you can get to know people that are also passionate about it. And then my last section here, right, is what you can do to help. So if you click here, so what can you do to help? And here I just do a little intro. I just really talk about it's kind of a hard question to ask because it's such a big question and there's so many things that you can do, and it's hard to give somebody a list to just follow. And so I mentioned a couple things like using using your own water bottle, so you don't have to use straws, you don't have to use what's it called? You don't have to use plastic bottles. Also, a metal straw if you wanted to use a straw. And then also talk about grocery shopping with plastic bags instead of using plastic bags. Just get your own bags and use them every time you go. And just simple things. But then my main takeaway, which I wanted for everyone to have, is just to kind of use common sense when you think about things, because you already know what you can do. You already know what's good and bad for the environment. You know what you can do to help. So when you think about it, just try and think yourself, if you really need that new phone, if you really need that new car, if you need that new shirt or whatever, and just try and every time you make a decision like that, try to think about how that's going to the environment. And up here I have it tagged, and this is an article, and it's 10 ways that you can help. That's if you wanted to if you didn't want to follow what I said, you just wanted to get a couple things that you could do to help the environment. And that's pretty much it.
Nice job, Chris. Do you want to turn off your screen share? We'll just have a quick chat at the end and see if there's any questions.
Yes. Okay.
Really impressive. Nice job tonight. I have to say that I'm really impressed not only with your knowledge and your passion for the subject, but it's clear that there's also a web design piece to all of this that you've really mastered. I mean, embedding the film piece in your website. Really, really impressive and passionate. It seems like it's something that's really near and dear to your heart. The science teacher you were talking about, that's your capstone mentor, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Very nice. One quick question. I was just really curious about the thing that you said about the coral, how when it dies, it bleaches.
Yeah.
What's the reason for it to die? Is there a certain length of time that it lasts, or is there something that happens within the environment that makes it die?
So coral is one of the most kind of like fidgety things in the and around only see it like the reef is a great example, but it's not in a lot of places because they're temperature. And one you get out of, I think it has like a uh yeah, I think 2 degree range, and if you go outside that range the coral will
What was the last thing you said? 2-degree range, the coral will what?
the dies if it's kept out of it.
Oh,
It has a specific needs for the temperature, and if it's outside of it, it'll die.
okay, gotcha. That makes sense. I see there's a few comments on the chat here and a couple questions, so I'm going to read those off to you. For those of you who are tuning in right now, you can feel free to click on the chat button on the bottom of your screen, and you could type comments or questions, and I could read those off for you since we can't unfortunately see or hear you being it's a webinar. So the first one is from Mr. Masseni, your principal. He said, great job, very thorough and presented with passion. I hope that someday you might share your talents with our town and partner with agencies to improve our environment. And the next one is from Matthew Hoey, who's our first selectman. He said, what would be the logical next step for the town to take now that we have the single-use plastic bag ban?
The thing is, there's a lot of directions that they can go, but plastic bag ban was really good. That was a really good first step. Maybe another thing is just reducing the amount of bottles, because that's a really easy fix that everybody can do. And instead of getting like instead for you like a couple and you glasses be the next move that we take as a town.
Like, that's a good point, and I think a lot of us are taking that step. There's all kinds of fancy reusable water bottles and stuff that you can get now. So I think that's a great answer. So I'll just give it another minute and see if anyone else has questions. Again, under the chat section of your Zoom screen, you can, here we go. Okay, so from Dr. Freeman, our superintendent, are you concerned that small steps we had been making, like reducing plastic bottle use, are being impacted by COVID-19?
It's kind of unclear to tell at this point what really is going to happen. I think we have to wait a little to do what's really in our future. But I don't think it'll have that big of an effect on like the plastic ban that they put on for like stores and everything. So yeah, I think we'll have to wait to see.
Yeah, I did notice in the grocery stores that many of them, some of them don't allow you to bring those reusable bags anymore, just because of contamination issues. But I think they're trying to use bags that are green and recyclable so that it doesn't impact it as much. But makes sense. Good question.